sort of reliability on like how reliable these amps are. I mentioned the store that I used to work in and the workshop and how many Vox AC30s they brought in. I would say 2 to 3 times a month somebody would come with some kind of Vox amp. And then also I went on a dealer visit once while I was working for Positive Grid, and I went to Stockholm and I met the guy who was the guitar tech for the band called Roxette. Remember Roxette?
Yeah.
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 And while a lot of people might not really, kind of think about guitar music when they listen to Roxette, because it kind of was very pop-oriented music, but there was a good amount of guitar in there, and the guitar player was a huge fan and user of the Vox AC30, and he just used it with pedals. So he usually had 2 of them on stage and then used it with pedals. And at some point, he got so frustrated with his Vox amps, like always breaking during shows, that he was like, okay, I gotta find some solution. And back then, so that was 2016, obviously the Kemper was there, and he was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go into the studio, and he took that guy with him that is the guitar tech. I'm gonna go into the studio. I'm gonna make profiles of my favorite Vox AC30s, like with the best possible mic preamp and mics that I can get. And then what he ended up doing is he was just using one profile with his Kemper and the pedals. Because he was like, I'm so sick and tired of like these things breaking down. And I've heard, again, don't quote me on it, I've heard the only reason why Brian May had a wall of Vox amps, because sometimes in the middle of the show, his technician had to plug into another one because one of them was actually about to break or like losing output power or something. Like,
yeah, there's actually some rig rundown that you can see with Brian May's guitar tech.
Yeah.
So they have a power voltage control.
Oh yeah.
Because the amps like to run at a certain power, right? They have that. They have a bunch of spares. And part of it has to do, like you think about it, they have, for the most part, Celestion Alnico Blues. And from what I understand from the interview I saw, Brian May doesn't use the vintage ones. He's using like the modern ones. So he's not afraid to like put a modern Alnico Blue in his amps. He has the 70th rather anniversary speaker alongside the Blue. So you're talking about an amp that is driving like 30 watts into a 15-watt speaker and a 30-watt speaker. So sometimes the Blue, they blow up, so they have to change them. So they have a lot of amplifiers. Most of them are modded, and I think they are modded for that very fact, for the reliability. So they change some of the components in there.
Yeah.
Even like the Brian May model, if I'm not mistaken, it's just one volume. There's like no knobs to control anything because he always uses the normal channel. It's like one volume. Dang, you crank it, and that's it with a treble booster.
Wow.
So, and he's got different ones. He's got the ones from the 70s that a lot of people say are crap, but that's what he has them in the lineup. Of course, there's like the visual aspect. Like you got like 9 amps, right? You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
No, they're not all plugged in. A lot of them are just for like the look, and then he's got 3 of them that are staggered on the sides, and I believe it's a wet, dry, wet setup. Oh, because he uses like delays. So kind of when he's doing like the whole Brighton Rock thing, where there's a bit of a call and response, and he harmonizes with the delay. So yeah, it's interesting when you get into it and you see how some people use something like that, like older amps, but still in 2023. He's touring with those. He's using like ping pong delays and all sorts of setup. But essentially, his rig is still fairly simple compared to, let's say, I don't know, someone like John Petrucci or, Steve Vai with like big racks. And I mean, those guys, they need a technician to be able to switch everything for them, because that's a hell of a lot of rig to bring on the road with you.
Yeah, definitely. So there you go. The reliability factor has been and tends to continue to be somewhat of an issue for Vox amps. And when it comes to the thing that we just talked about before, where all the things that people would want Vox to do and to kind of bring into, like regarding features, regarding like some of the things that we have these days that we could easily implement into the Vox platform, but still keep like the kind of spirit of Vox alive in a way, of the spirit of and the sound of Vox. In the meantime, a lot of other companies are doing exactly that. I mean, if we look at some of the companies, you mentioned Matchless being one of the first that really kind of looked at, okay, here's a great sounding amp, but it's failing regularly on stage. What can we do to change that? We've had Badcat. Then you look at some of the companies like Morgan Amplification is one of the guys he was really looking into, because he was a huge fan of the Vox AC30 and played it for a long time. But same thing, he was as soon as he was like more interested in actually building amps, he was looking at it, he was like, okay, this needs to go and this needs to go. Why is that in there? And then he starts to create his own versions that sound really well. Then there was a company called, where did I find that? Hayseed, who also did like...
Yeah, I remember those,
AC30 derivates. We had ValveTech is a company that also makes a good AC15 or AC30, but that is a head. It's not a combo, unit. Then what else? Dr. Z made a couple of like EL84 powered amps that kind of bring that Vox kind of vibe into it. Okay, so we had these
Trainwreck amps.
Yeah, Trainwreck.
I heard were based on those.
Yeah, I think the Trainwreck Comet is based on a Vox AC30. So there are a couple of companies who actually make, and I feel weird to say this, but make a kind of a better AC kind of amp than Vox does, because if you look at the Morgan has the power scaling, where you could actually crank this thing up but get the voltage of the power amp down, so you don't have your ears ringing when you try to use that at bedroom volume. So there are companies out there that are implementing these great features, but Vox isn't.